Marcus Johnson, a successful millionaire businessman, had built his wealth from the ground up. He owned several businesses and had a comfortable life with his wife, Linda. The couple had been married for many years, and life had been good, at least on the surface. Marcus worked hard, constantly thinking about expanding his empire, but there was always a small emptiness that lingered in the back of his mind. Years ago, Marcus and Linda had faced a difficult time when Linda became pregnant unexpectedly. The news had come as a shock to them both. It wasn't part of their plans, and there was pressure in Marcus's life with his growing businesses. Linda had told him that she was going to have an abortion, and although the idea was painful, Marcus believed it was the best decision at the time. They had moved on, but something never felt right to Marcus. He had always thought about what could have been, about the child that never was. Despite these unanswered questions, Marcus focused on his work, pushing aside any lingering thoughts of his lost child. Linda, too, had never brought up the topic again, and they both chose to move on, with their lives filled with business meetings and social gatherings. As the years passed, their relationship had become less about family and more about managing their different schedules. One cold evening, while Marcus was heading out for a meeting, something unusual happened. He was walking down the street when he saw a young woman sitting on a park bench. She was hunched over, her clothes ragged, and she was holding a cardboard sign asking for help. At first, Marcus didn't think much of it. However, something about her caught his attention. As he walked closer, he noticed that she had a striking resemblance to someone he knew, a striking resemblance to himself. There was no logical explanation for it. She couldn't be related to him, could she? Marcus took another step closer, his heart racing. He had seen her face, those features before, her eyes, her nose, and even the way she sat. It all seemed so familiar. The woman looked up, her eyes meeting his. "Do you have any spare change?" she asked softly, but her voice was what really struck him. It sounded almost familiar. Marcus stood there, frozen. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice coming out shakier than he intended. "Jasmine," the woman replied. There was a long pause as Marcus processed the name, the face, and the sudden flood of memories that came rushing back to him. The birthmark on her neck, the same one that had haunted his dreams for years. It couldn't be a coincidence. He had seen that mark before. The same mark that Linda had once told him their child would have. Suddenly, the world seemed to stand still. He couldn't breathe for a moment. His mind raced as he put the pieces together. Could this be his daughter? The child he thought had never been born. His heart raced as he tried to find the right words, but the truth was overwhelming. Jasmine, the homeless woman in front of him, had to be his daughter. "Jasmine, are you?" Marcus started, but the words caught in his throat. Jasmine looked up at him with a faint smile. She didn't know what to say either, but there was an undeniable connection between them. Could this man, who was now standing before her, be the father she had always wondered about? Marcus stood frozen for a moment, staring at Jasmine as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in his mind. The birthmark, the familiarity in her eyes, and the feeling that he had seen her face somewhere before, it was all adding up. This young woman, sitting on a cold bench, asking for spare change, was his daughter. He had so many questions, but he couldn't bring himself to ask them all at once. "Jasmine," Marcus finally said, his voice trembling slightly. "Is it really you?" He could hardly believe it, yet there she was, right in front of him, someone he had never known but had always wondered about. Jasmine looked up at him, her face a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. She had no idea who this man was, but something about the way he spoke, the way he looked at her, felt different. She had always been curious about her father. Her mother, Linda, had never spoken much about him, but Jasmine had always wondered if her dad was out there somewhere. "Who are you?" Jasmine asked softly, her voice hesitant. I'm your father," Marcus said, his heart racing. The words felt strange to him, like they didn't belong to the world he knew. He had spent so many years pushing the idea of having a family out of his mind, but now that reality was staring him in the face. Jasmine blinked, clearly shocked. "My father," she repeated, trying to process the information. "But my mom, she always said you didn't want me. She told me you didn't even know I existed." Marcus's heart sank at her words. He had never known about Jasmine. He had been told years ago that Linda had gone through with the abortion. To hear that she had kept this secret all these years, that Jasmine had been living a difficult life without him, was painful beyond words. "I didn't know," Marcus said softly, shaking his head. "I was told you weren't born. I didn't know your mother kept you from me." He paused, looking at Jasmine, his eyes filled with regret. "I never wanted to abandon you." Jasmine seemed to take in his words, her expression softening slightly. She had heard so many stories growing up, many of them about her mother's struggles and how she had always tried to protect Jasmine from the harshness of life. But this was different. The man before her was speaking with sincerity. It was hard to believe, but there was something in his voice that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this was true. "I've been living on the streets for so long," Jasmine said quietly. "I never thought I would meet you. I always wondered who you were, what you were like." Marcus felt a deep ache in his chest as he listened to her words. He had everything: a successful business, a beautiful home, luxury cars. And yet, for all his wealth, he had never had the one thing that truly mattered: family. His daughter had lived a difficult life, and he had no idea. Without thinking, Marcus sat down beside her on the bench. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, offering it to her. "Let me take you somewhere. I'll help you. You don't have to live like this anymore." Jasmine hesitated. She had spent so many years taking care of herself, surviving on her own. Trusting someone, especially a stranger who claimed to be her father, wasn't easy. But there was something in Marcus's eyes, a sincerity she hadn't seen before, that made her wonder if this could be the start of something different. "I don't know if I can trust you just yet," Jasmine said cautiously. "I've been let down before." "I understand," Marcus replied softly. "But I want to make it right. I want to be here for you, Jasmine. I know I've missed so much time, but I'm not going to make the same mistake again." For a long moment, they sat in silence. The world around them was bustling with people going about their day, but for Marcus and Jasmine, this moment felt like a new beginning. It was the start of a journey that neither of them could have imagined, but one that was filled with hope, healing, and the possibility of rebuilding the bond that had been broken for so many years. Marcus could sense the hesitation in Jasmine's eyes. She had every right to be cautious. He was a stranger to her, and she had spent her entire life without him. Trust wasn't something she could give away easily. But as they sat there on the park bench, Marcus felt a connection with her that he couldn't explain. It was the bond of a father and daughter, and despite the years they had lost, he was determined to make up for that time. "Jasmine, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm really here for you," Marcus said gently, his voice full of sincerity. "I don't want to make any promises I can't keep, but I want to help you. You don't have to be alone anymore." Jasmine glanced at him, studying his face. She could see the genuine concern in his eyes, but she had seen too many people pretend to care in her life. She had been hurt before, and she wasn't sure she was ready to trust someone she barely knew. But something about Marcus's words made her pause. Maybe this time it would be different. "Why now?" she asked, her voice small. "Why are you telling me all of this now, after all these years? My mom told me you didn't want me, that you didn't even know I existed." Marcus felt a wave of regret wash over him. He had never known the truth about Jasmine's birth, and learning that Linda had kept this secret from him filled him with sorrow. "I never wanted that," he said, shaking his head. "I was told that you weren't born, and I had to live with that lie. I didn't know you were out here, living like this." Jasmine looked down at her worn shoes, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. It was hard to hear him speak like this, especially after all the years of wondering about her father. I don't even know what to think, she whispered. It's like I've been living in the dark. And now you're here, saying all these things. How am I supposed to believe it? I understand, Marcus said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. You have every right to feel that way. I can't erase the past, but I can promise you that I'm here now. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. Jasmine met his gaze, her heart racing. Could this really be happening? Could this man, who she had never known, actually be her father? It seemed too good to be true, but something deep inside her made her want to believe. The idea of having a family, of having a father who cared, felt like a dream she never thought she would get to live. Marcus could see the inner struggle in Jasmine's eyes, and he knew that it wasn't going to be easy. Trust had to be built slowly, one step at a time. How about this? Marcus suggested, his tone kind but firm. Let me take you to lunch. We don't have to talk about anything heavy. Just a meal. No pressure. I just want to get to know you better, and I want you to get to know me too. Jasmine hesitated for a moment longer before nodding slowly. All right, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll go with you. But I'm not saying I trust you just yet. That's all I ask, Marcus replied with a smile. We'll take it slow. No rush. I just want to be there for you. And with that, the two of them stood up from the park bench. Marcus offered his arm to Jasmine, and although she wasn't sure where this new path would lead, she felt a flicker of hope for the first time in years. Perhaps this was the beginning of something new, something beautiful, a chance for a father and daughter to reconnect, to rebuild what was lost, and to start healing the wounds of the past. Marcus and Jasmine walked slowly down the street, the sounds of the busy city surrounding them. But the world felt different now. As they moved toward the small cafe just around the corner, Marcus couldn't help but glance at Jasmine every few moments. She seemed uncertain, almost lost in thought, as if she were trying to piece together the story of her life, which had just taken an unexpected turn. They reached the cafe and took a seat at a small table by the window. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the quiet chatter of other customers provided a comfortable background. Jasmine hesitated for a moment before ordering a simple sandwich and water. Marcus, on the other hand, ordered a coffee, but his mind was focused on the conversation that lay ahead. He didn't want to rush things. He knew they had to take this one step at a time. The waitress left with their orders, and Marcus turned his attention to Jasmine. I know this is a lot to take in, he began, his voice calm and reassuring. And I know I can't change the past. I just want to make sure you know that I'm here now. I want to be part of your life. But I understand if you need time. Jasmine looked at him, her brow furrowed in thought. I don't know what to say, she replied honestly. I spent my whole life trying to survive on my own. I never thought I would meet you. I always thought. I don't know, that I was just a part of a story that no one cared about. Marcus's heart ached at her words. He had no idea the extent of the pain she had gone through, living alone, struggling to find a place in the world, while he had been living his own life, completely unaware. I'm sorry you had to go through all of that, he said, his voice sincere. I can't imagine what it must have been like. I should have been there. I should have known. Jasmine shook her head. It's not your fault, she said. I don't blame you. I don't even know if I should be angry with Mom for keeping this from you. She always said I was better off without you, that I didn't need a father. I believed her, but I don't know anymore. Everything is just so confusing. Marcus took a deep breath. I understand. It's a lot for both of us, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not here to try to fix things in a day or make you forget the past. I'm just here to get to know you, to be the father I should have been all these years. Jasmine's eyes softened. She had never expected to hear someone speak like this, especially not a man she had never known. But there was something about Marcus's honesty that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. I don't know how to be a daughter, Jasmine said quietly. I've been taking care of myself for so long, It's hard to imagine things being any different. Marcus smiled gently. You don't have to know how to be anything. We'll take it one step at a time. You don't have to carry everything by yourself anymore. I'm here to help. Jasmine nodded slowly. For the first time in a long while, she felt like there was a chance for something new, something better. She had been through so much, but maybe now, with her father in her life, she could start to heal. The waitress returned with their food, and as they began to eat, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes, a silence that said, "We're just beginning this journey together." And in that moment, Marcus knew that this was only the start of something bigger, something he never expected. As Marcus and Jasmine sat together in the cafe, their conversation began to flow more naturally. The initial tension that had filled the air slowly dissipated. Jasmine, though still cautious, started to open up more. She shared bits and pieces of her life, how she had grown up in foster care, how difficult it had been, and how she had always felt like an outsider, even in the places she lived. Marcus listened intently, his heart aching for her. He had been so wrapped up in his own world that he hadn't even realized what his daughter had gone through all these years. People never treated me like I belonged anywhere, Jasmine said, her voice quiet but filled with emotion. I always felt like I was invisible, even in the foster homes. No one cared enough to really see me for who I was. It was like I was just another person passing through. Marcus felt a pang of guilt in his chest. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. No child should have to feel invisible. I can't change what's happened, but I want you to know that I see you. You matter. You always have. Jasmine's eyes glistened, and for a moment, Marcus thought she might cry. But instead, she took a deep breath and looked at him, a mixture of sadness and hope in her expression. I don't know what to do now, she admitted. I don't know how to trust people, especially not after everything that's happened. Marcus nodded. He understood her hesitation. Trust wasn't something that came easily after years of being let down, but he also knew that he wasn't going to give up on her. We can take this one step at a time, he said gently. We don't need to rush anything. I'm here for you, no matter what. The silence between them was comfortable now, a quiet understanding settling over the table. As they ate their food, Marcus thought about how different everything was now. 10 years ago, he had never imagined this moment, sitting in a cafe with his daughter, who had spent so many years without him. His life had been so focused on business, on success, and now, sitting here, he realized how much he had missed. He couldn't change the past, but he could change the future. He could be the father that Jasmine deserved. He could make up for the lost time, even though he knew it wouldn't be easy. But that was okay. They had time now. They had a chance to start again, to build something meaningful. Jasmine, I know it's not going to be easy, Marcus said, looking at her earnestly, but I want to help you. Whatever you need, whether it's a place to stay, a job, or just someone to talk to, I'm here. Jasmine looked at him, a small smile forming on her lips. I don't know if I'm ready for all that yet, she said softly, but I'd like to try. I think, maybe I want to get to know you. I want to know who you are, and who I am with you in my life. Marcus felt a rush of emotion. He had waited so long for this moment, and now that it was here, he knew it was just the beginning of a long, uncertain journey. But for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. There was so much work to do, so much to repair, but he was willing to put in the effort. As they finished their meal, they talked more about the past, about what Marcus had missed, and about what they both wanted for the future. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for Marcus, that was enough. One step at a time. As the weeks went by, Marcus and Jasmine slowly started to build their relationship. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of silence, moments where both of them felt unsure about the next step. But there was something about their connection that made them both keep trying. Marcus would visit Jasmine almost every day, bringing her food or a warm blanket, and they would sit together, talking about anything and everything. Jasmine was still getting used to the idea of having a father, of someone who truly cared for her. She had spent so many years fending for herself, not knowing if anyone would ever truly see her or accept her. Trust didn't come overnight, but she was starting to believe that maybe Marcus wasn't like the others who had come and gone in her life. He was steady, kind, and patient, and that made all the difference. One afternoon, Marcus invited Jasmine to his office to talk. He had a meeting with his financial team and thought it might be a good opportunity to show her his world, a world she hadn't seen before. At first, Jasmine was nervous. She had never been in a fancy office building like the one Marcus worked in, and she didn't know what to expect. But Marcus reassured her. "You don't have to feel out of place here," he said. "This is just my work. But I want you to see it. I want you to understand who I am and what I do." When they walked into the building, Jasmine couldn't help but be amazed. The lobby was sleek and modern, with polished marble floors and high ceilings. The walls were decorated with expensive artwork, and the air smelled fresh and crisp. As they entered the elevator, Marcus noticed Jasmine's wide eyes and smiled. "You'll get used to it," he said. "It's all part of the world I built. But none of this matters if I don't have my family. And you, Jasmine, are part of that now." Jasmine smiled softly, a little unsure of what to say. She had never really thought about wealth or success in the same way Marcus did. To her, survival had always been the priority. But as she looked around, she started to see that there was more to Marcus than just his riches. There was heart, there was care, and there was a willingness to open up to her, despite all the years lost. Later that day, Marcus took Jasmine to a nearby park. They sat on a bench together, looking at the people walking by. For the first time in a long time, Jasmine felt like she belonged. She wasn't just a lost soul wandering through life. She was part of something, part of a family. "Marcus," she said after a while, "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. I never imagined this day would come. You've changed my life." Marcus smiled warmly. "You don't need to thank me. You're my daughter, and I've missed so much time with you. But now that we found each other, I'll make sure we don't lose any more." As the sun began to set, the air turned cooler, but neither of them minded. They sat there in silence, enjoying the peace, knowing that their bond was growing stronger with each passing day. The journey wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, of confusion and fear. But what mattered was that Marcus and Jasmine were learning how to trust each other. And that, more than anything, was the first step toward a better future, one they would face together. As time passed, Marcus and Jasmine continued to grow closer. They spent more time together, and each day brought them a little bit further along in their journey of building a father-daughter relationship. Marcus understood that their bond couldn't be built in a day or a month. It was a slow process. Jasmine still had doubts, but she began to let her guard down little by little. She started to see Marcus not just as the wealthy businessman she had imagined, but as the father who truly cared about her. One day, Marcus invited Jasmine to join him for a weekend getaway to the countryside. He wanted to give her a break from the struggles of city life, to show her a peaceful, calming place where they could talk and reflect. Jasmine was hesitant at first, unsure of what to expect, but she agreed. It was a beautiful, quiet retreat, far from the noise of the city. The air smelled fresh and crisp, and the vast green fields seemed to stretch out endlessly. As they walked through the fields, Marcus shared stories from his past, about his childhood, his early struggles, and how he had built his businesses. Jasmine listened intently, finding herself fascinated by the man who, until recently, had been a complete stranger. She had always wondered about her father, and now she was learning more than she ever expected. She started to see how much he had worked to get to where he was, and it gave her a new perspective on his life. After their walk, they sat by a quiet pond, the sound of water gently lapping at the shore. The atmosphere was peaceful, and for the first time, Jasmine felt truly at ease with Marcus. They didn't have to talk constantly. The silence between them felt comfortable, filled with the understanding that they were both trying to learn how to be family. "Do you ever think about the past?" Jasmine asked, breaking the silence. "About everything you missed, all the time we lost?" Marcus thought for a moment before responding. "I think about it every day, Jasmine. It hurts to know how much I missed, but I can't change it. What I can do is make sure that from now on, we make the most of the time we have. I can't take back the past, but I can be here for you now. That's all I can do." Jasmine looked at him, her heart softening. She had spent so many years feeling abandoned, believing that no one cared. But now, sitting beside Marcus, she realized that he had been hurt by the past too. He hadn't chosen to be absent from her life. It had been out of his control. The pain they both felt from the lost years was something they would have to face together. I think I'm starting to believe you," Jasmine said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty, but also hope. "Maybe we can make up for some of it." Marcus smiled warmly, his eyes full of understanding. "We will, Jasmine. We'll take it one day at a time. We have a lot to catch up on, but I'm in this for the long haul." As the day came to a close, Marcus and Jasmine returned to the house, a sense of peace settling over them. There were still many unanswered questions and challenges ahead, but for the first time in years, they both felt that they had a chance to move forward together. Jasmine wasn't just a homeless woman she had once passed by in the city. She was his daughter, and he was determined to build a relationship with her, no matter how long it took. Their journey wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was real, and that was all that mattered. They had both learned that sometimes the most difficult roads lead to the greatest rewards, and they were ready to take that road together.